to shake things up and try to skew things towards Johnny Manziel, because I don't believe that's what's happening at all. I think you're looking at a guy who's out for 10 weeks, a little bit rusty, and it takes a while to get back into it. I'll be honest with you. Players, I guarantee you, and I'm not in Cleveland, and you can do this if you want, but I guarantee you, if you pull that locker room, the vast majority of players will say Johnny Manziel is the best option. And that's simply because players look at things talent-driven, purely talent-related, and that's about the skill set. And the skill set is clearly better. That doesn't always translate to the quarterback position, especially because so much more comes into it when it comes to innate decision making. But I always joke, if you talk to a whole generation of football players and nobody else, you would think Michael Vick was the greatest quarterback in the history of football. Because if you hear the way professional football players talk about Michael Vick, you would think it's, Joe Montana skewed with the best of Terry Bradshaw and Roger Staubach, and everything morphed together to create this perfect quarterback. And it's the farthest thing from the truth. What he does have is unbelievable athletic ability, arm strength, everything. But it didn't translate as well to the quarterback position as, say, to a guy like, we all know the great quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is the best right now. Take a guy like Drew Brees, who's undersized. People might look at him and go, Drew Brees, who's that? But if you want Drew Brees or Michael Vick, who do you want? You obviously want Drew Brees. So players aren't always the best indication of who should be playing the quarterback position because they're just looking at a guy and saying, wow, look at his athleticism, look at his arm strength, whatever it might be. You have to take that with a grain of salt. And if this is coming across as a defense of Brian Hoyer, it's not. It's just a matter of you don't make a change when you're 7-5. 2 weeks from now, if you're 7-7 and you want to take a look at them,
exactly,
I have no issue with it. No issue whatsoever. But at this point, with Andrew Luck coming in, add that pressure on top of it. Not only is he coming in to start in the middle of a playoff hunt, who's coming to Cleveland? Andrew Luck. I don't get it, and I won't get it. If they win 4 straight games and make it to the playoffs, I still would say the same thing. I still don't get the decision at the time it was made.
Like you just said, though, about the 49ers. It just
doesn't make sense.
It worked out, but it was a bold move to be made. And exactly, like you said, that's something people will say after the fact there with it. But I'm with you. We hadn't even, all of those things. I still look to this week. I said it the earlier part of the show. I said there's only one energy boost that comes with the very first time that you put the kid in the game. You got that yesterday. You wasted it in the fourth quarter of a game that you were already out of. So there was the whole Johnny's playing for the first time juice. Bam, that's used. You can't play that card again. Now you have one more. Johnny's starting for the first time. Bam, you can play that card and everybody will show up. Players and fans will show up this weekend and boom, everybody's fired up. You've played that card. That's it. So to me, that's a last-ditch deal. But I sit here and I go, man, I hope that this works for the Browns because otherwise you sit there and you see a situation where you're getting rolled at halftime. If there's a couple of rookie mistakes, all of a sudden the fans are looking around going, hold on a second. I bought tickets to see the Colts in the beginning of December, and we're 7-5. Why are we throwing this out with the dishwater like this? Because that is the way it comes across. Say what you want. It's just, and I agree. Maybe it's because they had the schedule that they had, and it worked out that they won. Like you said, I don't believe that the Browns and this is going to stink, Browns fans. You're probably going to get mad at me for saying this, but John's right. The Browns had no intention of winning games this season. They said, hey, we'll go out here, we'll win a couple, we'll get the rookie out here, he'll play for half of a season, and then we'll start building towards next year. They can't tell you that, but that was their plan. And then they won some games, and all of a sudden it was like, hey, all right, man, we're going to win some games. And then they end up at this point here where there is no good time to make this move, and basically the Browns had to decide, and this is my gut feeling, the Browns had to decide, we make this change or we don't make it until the last week of the season, because we're probably going to be in the hunt for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I think at that point, you can't really evaluate a guy on one game at the last game anyway. So the Browns, without telling the fans, the Browns have told the fans, our season is competitively over on December 1st.
Well, and the second part of this, I haven't brought up, and I want to bring this aspect of it. I think Ray Farmer is at the forefront of this decision, and is a key part of it.
Drafted him,
and I do not think he wanted to hit January 1st. After a 10-6 season,
with no idea
that maybe the Browns didn't make the playoffs because the AFC was so difficult this year. But you're 10-6 with a Cleveland native playing quarterback, and all of a sudden you have to make a decision: do you sign him long term, or do you go back to the guy you drafted in the first round? As I said, there's not an NFL team in the world, of 32 NFL teams, if they take a quarterback in the first round, that's with the intent on playing him. No matter what they say at any point of a season, in my indication, in my estimation, this ultimately proves that Ray Farmer had no intention of ever even addressing bringing Brian Hoyer back as a potential starter for next season, no matter what the outcome was of this season, barring a Super Bowl championship, which obviously wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, and you go back and look at the comments now, you can see that too. But you're right. You said that from day one. We've had this discussion. It's always come back to since the day they drafted him, that's the way. And we all knew that. It just, the way this season played out, you hit it on the head. The Browns did not want to find themselves at the end of a season going, we have no clue whether this kid over here can play, especially, and I think I know it's people say you don't draft a quarterback 2 years in a row. Say whatever you want. The Browns need to figure out this year, especially about Manziel, because I'm telling you, I've heard that the quarterback that Ray Farmer has had his eye on for 2.5 years now is Mariota. And he clearly is somebody that interested the Browns a year and a half ago. They've been scouting. I mean, everybody is. It's not like he's some off-the-radar guy. But point being is the Browns have the ammunition with extra draft picks and stuff to go do anything they feel that they need to do in the next year or two. So that's part of it too, because if they're wrong about, Manziel, then they want to move on that way too. They need to figure out what they want to do going forward as far as the quarterback. But still, it's just the function of the schedule put them in a position that they sure did not anticipate being in here. So let me ask you something too. I think the opposition too maybe plays a part in like them pulling the trigger Wednesday full, as we expect them to do, because look at Colt McCoy, late game had some success against this defense. There's times that you are able to get going against this defense. So perhaps that's part of the thought process as well, is that even if we lose the game, this is a defense that perhaps Manziel can go out here and do some things against, so it gives them a good first experience here in the NFL.
Well, I mean, Indianapolis doesn't have a good defense, but, obviously you're probably going to have to score in the 30s to beat them because of luck. So either way, I mean, do you want to lean on the kid and say, okay, the defense isn't that good, maybe you can spin it that way, but then all of a sudden you're going to get in the passing contest with Andrew Luck. I don't know how that's going to make him look.
John, we live in Cleveland where where the fan base is going to come out next Monday and say, "Oh man, we lost 42-20, but Johnny Manziel looked amazing," instead of 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
3 weeks earlier,
I mean,
going,
to me,
man,
if this was always your
won
mentality,
21-20,
and it clearly now
ugly,
it was. We can argue, but why not get him in the stretch when it was Jacksonville, Oakland, Tampa Bay?
At least then he could have went to work on some. Yes, exactly. But it's just, my point is, it's going to be amazing to hear that next week when people talk about, man, we got blown out, but damn, that Johnny football looks amazing. Instead of, man, Hoyer won another ugly game yesterday, man.
Yeah, and even, obviously you're coming off the win over Pittsburgh, I think, before Jacksonville. So you can't bench Hoyer then. That's understandable because he just beat a team you never beat. So you can't bench him. But then was the worst game of the year against the Jaguars.
After that one, yeah.
Then that's where you bench him and you let Manziel play against Oakland and Tampa Bay. On so many levels, this just doesn't make any sense.
Do you mean to tell me that maybe the Cleveland Browns franchise has bungled and mismanaged another potential situation here, and now they have to...
I know, shocking.
Shocking.
It's shocking. I mean, you wonder, and I know Cleveland fans feel, inundated at times, and we in the national media are too harsh on the Cleveland Browns. But if you take a step back and look at it objectively, why the heck wouldn't we be harsh on this team? Other teams don't make these decisions. They really don't. Your one commenter brought up the 49ers, and I've already explained the difference between that. Alex Smith got a concussion. He was replaced because of injury. He wasn't benched. He was replaced because of injury. And tell me, I encourage anyone, because I would like to be corrected. Explain to me that a team that hasn't been in the playoffs for years is in the midst of a playoff run, whether you believe it or not, is 7-4 heading into Western New York yesterday. Even now, 7-5 after the loss. And then they benched the quarterback for the last month of the season for a rookie who had not completed an NFL pass before yesterday. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
For people, especially I get this a lot on Twitter, and sometimes people ask me, man, the Cleveland fan base, you always talk about how great they are, but you know how crazy this is. I say, you know why? Look at the stuff. Look at what you just said right there. That's part of the problem as well. I mean, when you're consistently inundated with stuff like that, it is what it is. And like I said, come Wednesday, there will be no more ifs, ands, or buts. It's going to be official.
And by the way, I hope they prove me wrong, and I hope, they do backtrack and they make the decision to go forward with Brian Hoyer. If not, as I said, if you lose to Indianapolis and lose to Cincinnati, that's when you make the move. That's when you look at him for the final two games. And that's no issue. I don't know how many other ways to say it. It's just a head scratcher of a decision on so many levels, and you question whether how similar in when we talk about the New York Jets is Rex Ryan. I firmly believe that Rex Ryan never wanted to start Geno Smith this year. On week one, he was forced into it by the GM there, John Idzik. He finally went to Michael Vick. Now he's been forced to go back to Geno Smith. You never really know who's making these decisions. I get that feeling here. You have a first-year coach who obviously didn't have a big-time reputation coming in, and you have a general manager who took a quarterback in the first round. And, he's already getting criticized for a top 10 pick that barely plays. General managers want their picks to succeed. So how many fingerprints of Ray Farmer are on this decision? That will remain to be seen. Maybe never answered.
Yep, Absolutely. Well, they're going to get some questions answered here, hopefully, one way or the other. Hey, you and I spent a lot of time here talking about the quarterback situation. Let's talk about some of the other stuff to come out of yesterday's game. You and I just spent a few minutes crediting that Buffalo defense. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show that makes me feel good looking ahead over the next few seasons for the Browns defensively, because even though he didn't create that entire defense, he only had a portion to do with it there. There is a lot of the Pettine and O'Neal fingerprints on that. So looking ahead, it does make me